Hey, AP students, we're here with some practice problems, some free response question practice problems. We're at the 2015 test. This should have been shared with you, but I will show you the questions as we go through. So anyway, starting with number one, pause it, take a picture with your phone so you can kind of look at it as we go. I'm going to start solving it here. So like I said, if you need to work on it, go ahead and pause it. So we're starting off here. We are in a recessionary gap, and or below full employment. So that's a recessionary gap. So let's just get that drawn. So part A is it's just asking us to draw our graph here, and it wants us to be below full employment, which is represented by our long run aggregate supply, short run aggregate. Make sure we got everything labeled here, right? And I know it's getting repetitive, but we're getting there. And it says label the current price level at P1, price level 1, and also the current output at Y1. Our full employment is going to be YF. Okay, so that's part A right there, 1 and 2. You should be set to go. All right, for part B, it's asking what the Federal Reserve the Federal Reserve is going to target new federal funds rate to reach full employment. Should we raise it or lower it? And again, that federal funds rate, remember, that's the interest rate that banks have to pay each other when they borrow money from each other, when they go below that reserve requirement. So part B is they should lower that interest rate. Okay, it doesn't ask us to explain. We just need to say that that's what we're going to do. Part C, we're going to draw a picture of the money market. Should have something like this. You got the supply of money, you got the demand for money, loans, right? We've got our interest rate, we've got our quantity. Well, if we lower this rate, that means banks are going to be willing to get closer to that point where they might be getting the close to that where they have to borrow money from other banks, that reserve requirement. So that's going to lower our interest rate there. Those are the first three answers. All right, for part D, all right, it's going to tell us that the government's going to try to fix this thing by increasing government spending. And so I'll show you the math here. First of all, we've got a marginal propensity to consume at 0.8. That means our marginal propensity to save equals 0.2. We've got two formulas we've got to know. The first one is the spending multiplier. The next one is the tax multiplier. Spending multiplier is going to be, and again, it didn't give us this MPS, but we know that MPC plus MPS has to equal 1. Our spending multiplier is going to be 1 divided by that MPS, 0.2. Our tax is 0.8 divided by 0.2. It's 5 equals 4. We're going to come back to those here in a second. So the first one has us how much of an increase in spending does the government have to spend? I set up the equation like this, times 5 equals 300 billion, right? I got to solve for x. 300 divided by 5 equals $60 billion for the government spending in that case. Number 2 is asking us for the tax. So we've got x times 4 equals 300 billion. That equals $75 billion in tax cuts that they would have to implement. All right, that's our number. Those are part D. All right, for part E, it is asking us, assuming the government lowers income tax rates to eliminate the recessionary gap. So now they flip over to fiscal policy, still mentioning the fiscal policy. Which of the following is going to, or which of each is going to happen? So for aggregate demand, if we lower income tax, that means I got more money in my pocket. Number 1 is we got an increase in aggregate demand. Increased income for people, right? Increase in income. That's not taxed. Long run aggregate supply, in this particular case, I'm going to say that it's not going to shift. So it's going to stay the same because the way that we move our long run aggregate supply is by investing in human capital. Okay, so no investment in this case in human capital. That's what I'm going to say there. All right, hopefully that works out for number 1. Email me with questions. let's move right on to number 2. Go ahead and pause it here real quick. This question number 2 up here should look familiar. We've actually done it. I'm going to go ahead and solve it for you just as a quick, easy review. But pause it, go ahead and take a shot at it. It is good practice. All right. So anytime I get these questions, I'm going to set up my little T chart here, and I've got X, I've got Y, I've got X can equal 6 or 6 furnaces equals 80 solar panels. Y is 6 furnaces equals 12 solar panels. All right. And I'm going to do the math. 1 furnace equals 4/3. 3/4 of a furnace equals 1 solar panel. 1 furnace equals 2 solar panels. 1 solar panel equals a half of a furnace. All right, and I'm going to start labeling and marking which side has the comparative advantage. X has the comparative advantage in producing furnaces. Y has the comparative advantage in producing solar panels. So I know that I'm going to eventually get to that particular point. The first question is, which country has the absolute advantage in producing solar panels? That's just who can produce more, right here and right here. So country Y has the absolute advantage. If it has you explain, just say they can produce more. Part B, what is the opportunity cost of a furnace in country Y? 1 furnace equals 2 solar panels. I'm abbreviating a little bit. Which country has the comparative advantage in producing furnaces? We've got X has the country in producing furnaces. They give up less. They have lower opportunity cost. They have lower. And then part D is asking us, should country X produce solar panels domestically or trade? And so I set this up like this. All right. So our terms of trade in this case are 2 furnaces equals 1 solar panel. All right. We're going to flip that over and mean 1 furnace equals a half of a solar panel. So this is what country X is going to get if they trade. If they trade their 1 furnace, they only get half of a solar panel. However, if they trade 1 furnace domestically, so to speak, meaning like I decide not to produce that furnace, they get 4/3. This spot is better than the trade down here. They should produce domestically. Okay, there's your answers for that. Email me with questions. Let's move on to number 3 here. All right, we've got exchange rates and some things going on here. All right. Go ahead and take a look if you haven't yet. Get it solved, and we'll start going from here. All right. So first things first, what we got to realize is that we've got an increase in Japan's budget deficit is going to do something. What we've got to be able to tie into that means in Japan here, the demand. This is our loanable funds, interest rate, quantity, supply, demand. So the government starts borrowing more money. That's why that's being shown by the deficit increasing. So interest rates in Japan are going to increase. Okay, it doesn't ask us for that. Oh, it does ask us for that in part 1. It didn't necessarily ask us to draw it. Sorry. So for part 1, interest rates are going to increase. All right, part 2, private domestic investment in plant and equipment in Japan. Well, that is going to, in this case, decrease. They can't borrow money. They can't borrow as much. All right. Now, part B is getting into, all right, talking about what's going to happen in the foreign exchange market for the euro and show that due to the real interest rate in Japan. Okay, so I need a graph of the euro here. For this, we've got yen. This is of the euro. Okay, yen over euro. All right, we've got the demand by Japan, and we've got the supply by Europe. All righty. So here's what it's asking us, and here's what we need to know. All right, since interest rates in Japan are increasing, what that's going to do, okay, in the graph for Japan, and excuse me here while I draw these kind of fast, all right, demand by Europe, supply by Japan, all right. Now Europeans are going to want to invest in Japanese banks. So it's going to increase our demand for Japanese yen. Okay. Over here, we've got to kind of match what we did, so to speak. We've got to increase our supply of euros over here. Now, it's asking us, all right, what happens to in the market for the supply of euros? Well, we have that drawn here. We know that since the demand for the Japanese yen is going to increase, that the supply of euros has to go up. So the supply of euros is going to increase. Again, due to better investment options. All right. Part two there, it's asking us what happens, and I want to make sure I word this correctly. What happens to the yen price of the euro? All right. So it's asking us what happens, how much yen do I have to spend to buy 1 euro? Well, now I spend 1 yen. Notice our fractions here. I filled these out on purpose, right? And that's 2 1 1 1 1 over 2. So now it costs me 1 yen to buy 2 euros. So my price of euros actually decreases. Okay, in this particular case. All right, it goes down. Last one, kind of tricky. All right, is if a bunch of, word it correctly, sorry, asking us what should the government do, all right, the central bank in Europe, what should they do to make sure that euros don't depreciate so much, all right? Well, one thing that the central bank in Europe can do is they can buy their own currency, as weird as that is to sound. If they buy their own currency, all right, what that means is it's going to increase their demand, or I'm sorry, it's going to decrease their supply of their currency back. So now the Europeans don't have nearly as much currency to provide Japan, so to speak. So they're going to, in this case, try to take that decision making out of their citizens' hands. They're going to buy that currency from them. There's your answers for those three. By all means, holler at me if you have questions. Hopefully, you're starting to get a good hang on this stuff.